6 months. That's all it takes to become completely unrecognizable. Not physically, but psychologically. What happens during this extended disappearance goes against everything society has taught you about isolation. It challenges everything you believe about solitude. And it reveals why those who vanish for long stretches return profoundly changed, or don't return at all. Carl Jung vanished for 6 years after his break with Freud in 1913, and what he unearthed during that period, a confrontation with the unconscious, forms the bedrock of everything I'm about to share. If you're contemplating disappearing, if you've already vanished and are grappling with what's happening to you, or if you know someone who has disappeared and you're searching for understanding, this video will expose the truth that no one else is telling you. First, I need to break down what happens neurologically. In the initial weeks of disappearance, Dr. K. Tai, in a February 2024 episode of the Huberman Lab podcast, revealed that specific neurons exist in the dorsal raphe nucleus, the DRN, that constantly monitor your level of social interaction. They act like a thermostat when you abruptly remove social stimulus. These neurons enter a state of high alert. They start firing search signals, as if they're desperately seeking the interaction that has been taken away. This explains why the first 2 weeks of intentional isolation are the hardest. Your brain is literally going through social withdrawal. The same circuits that light up when a substance abuser stops using activate when you cut off social input. But here's what nobody tells you. After about 2 weeks, roughly 14 days, something begins to shift. Research from the University of Buffalo, published in Nature Neuroscience, has demonstrated that prolonged isolation alters myelin production in the prefrontal cortex. Myelin is the sheath that wraps around your neurons, accelerating signal transmission, and during isolation, this production changes, not necessarily decreasing. It reconfigures the brain, without the constant demand of processing social interactions, starts to redirect resources. And this is precisely what Jung observed in himself during his period of isolation. Even without the benefit of modern neuroscience to explain it, he described the early months as a time of intense internal turmoil. The voices that are normally drowned out by the noise of the external world begin to become audible. Repressed content begins to surface. The shadow self, as he would later call it, starts to manifest in increasingly insistent ways. And here's the first major secret of the 6-month disappearance. In the first 4 to 6 weeks, you'll experience what Jung called nigredo, the darkening. It's the alchemical phase where everything seems to crumble, where the internal darkness becomes unbearable, where you'll question why you decided to do this in the first place. Most people give up at this stage. They interpret the discomfort as a sign that something is wrong, that isolation isn't for them, that they need to return to the surface. But the discomfort isn't a sign of error. It's a sign that the process is working. Andrew Huberman has explained in multiple episodes that neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself, is activated by states of urgency and discomfort. He calls this self-directed adaptive plasticity. The brain needs a signal that something important is happening to justify the energy expenditure of creating new neural connections. The discomfort of nigredo is that signal. Your brain is getting the message that a fundamental shift is underway, and it's preparing to execute it. If you persist beyond the first 6 weeks, something remarkable begins to happen. The second month of isolation marks the transition to what Jung called albedo, the whitening. The initial turbulence begins to subside, not because the unconscious content has stopped emerging, but because you've developed a greater ability to observe it, without being consumed by it. It's in this phase that differentiation begins to occur. You begin to realize that you aren't your internal voices, that parts of you function autonomously, that have their own agendas, their own desires. Jung called these fragments complexes, constellations of psychic energy that operate below the threshold of consciousness. And when you can observe these complexes without identifying with them, something magical happens. They begin to lose their power over you. Neuroscience confirms this in a fascinating way. Harvard research from 2024 has shown that neuroplasticity remains active up to the age of 80, which means that even in isolation, your brain is constantly creating new connections. It's reconfiguring itself based on the new internal experiences you're having. And here's what differentiates those who emerge transformed from those who simply waste 6 months. Documentation. Jung was obsessive about recording. During his period of confrontation with the unconscious, he kept a detailed diary. He recorded dreams, visions, conversations with internal figures. He painted. He sculpted, transforming the chaotic material of the unconscious into external forms. Huberman explains that the act of writing forces the prefrontal cortex to organize information that would otherwise remain diffuse. You are literally reconfiguring neural circuits when you write about your internal experiences. Journaling isn't just a psychological tool, it's a neurological tool. And there's a specific form of journaling that maximizes transformation during disappearance. You don't just write down what happened, you write down what you felt, and not just what you felt, but which part of you was feeling it. You start to name the voices, to identify the internal characters, to give shape to the autonomous complexes. When you can name something, it loses its power over you. This is one of Jung's most profound discoveries. Consciousness transforms. Naming differentiates. What was once an amorphous mass of unconscious content becomes a set of identifiable entities that you can dialogue with. And this is exactly what happens between the 3rd and 4th month of isolation. You begin to have productive internal conversations. Not the chaotic and obsessive dialogue that characterizes rumination, but genuine conversations with parts of you that have never been heard before. Complexes that operated in the dark, sabotaging your decisions, shaping your relationships, determining your destiny, finally have the chance to speak. Jung developed a formal technique for this that he called active imagination. It's different from meditation. It's different from fantasy. It's an intentional dialogue with figures from the unconscious, treating them as real entities with valid perspectives. It might sound like madness to someone who's never experienced it, but it's exactly the opposite. It's the most sophisticated form of sanity, because it recognizes that the psyche isn't monolithic, that within each person, there are multiple voices, multiple perspectives, multiple agendas, and that mental health doesn't come from suppressing these voices, but from integrating them. And here's what happens when you hit month 5. The 5th month is when the transformation becomes irreversible. Carl Jung called this phase citrinitas, the yellowing. It's when a new consciousness begins to emerge from the ashes of the old self. It's not yet full rebirth, but it's the first glimpse of who you're becoming. And neurologically, something extraordinary is happening. Huberman explains that sleep is when the real neural reconnection occurs. During the day, you're providing the stimuli, creating the urgency, focusing the attention, but it's during sleep, especially during the non-sleep deep rest phases, NSDR, that the brain consolidates the changes, that the new circuits solidify. 5 months of isolation means approximately 150 nights of neural consolidation, 150 opportunities for your brain to reorganize its connections. And if you're using this time correctly, documenting, dialoguing with the unconscious, maintaining a rigorous structure, those 150 nights are literally creating a new you. But here's the warning that Jung made repeatedly. Isolation cannot be passive. There's a crucial difference between active isolation and passive isolation. Passive isolation is lying in bed, watching Netflix endlessly, scrolling social media in the dark, avoiding the world without replacing it with inner work. This type of isolation doesn't lead to individuation, it leads to degeneration. Huberman has been clear about this in episodes about dopamine. When you remove external stimuli without replacing them with internal challenges, your dopaminergic system collapses. Dopamine isn't about pleasure. As Dr. Anna Lemke explained on the Huberman Lab podcast, it's about motivation, about wanting, about seeking. If you remove everything that you sought in the external world and don't create anything to seek internally, you fall into a state that mimics severe depression. Not because you're depressed in the clinical sense, but because your brain has nothing to pursue. Productive isolation solves this by creating structure. Jung woke up early every day. During his period of isolation, he had schedules for writing, for painting, for sculpting, for meditating. His schedule during isolation was more rigorous than before, not less, because he understood that without external structure, the internal chaos would consume him, and that's exactly why most people fail at disappearing. They enter isolation, thinking it's a period of rest, of escape, of a break. But it's not. It's a period of intense work, the hardest work you'll ever do, because it's work without external supervision, without imposed deadlines, without immediate feedback. And if you can't motivate yourself without these external elements, isolation will destroy you instead of transforming you. Now, I need to tell you what happens in the 6th month and why it's different from everything that came before. The 6th month corresponds to what Jung called rubedo, the reddening, the final phase of alchemical transformation. It's when the opposites integrate, when the conscious and the unconscious find a dynamic equilibrium, when the self, with a capital S, finally emerges. Jung described this experience as the discovery of a larger personality maturing within you. It's not that you become someone different, it's that you discover who you've always been, beneath all the layers of conditioning, of persona, of other people's expectations. And here's what no one prepares you for. When you emerge from the 6th month, you won't want to go back, not because the world is bad, but because you've experienced a way of being that's incompatible with the superficiality of normal social life. You spent 6 months dialoguing with the depths of your own soul, and now, small talk about the weather feels like torture. Jung warned about this risk. He wrote that individuation can create a form of loneliness deeper than the one that existed before, because now you know things that most people don't know. You've experienced states that most will never experience, and finding people who can keep up with you on that level becomes exponentially more difficult. But something compensatory also happens. The connections you form after the period of isolation are of a different quality. They're no longer based on persona, on mask, on social performance. They're based on authenticity, on genuine self. Connecting with genuine self. Jung maintained deep relationships until the end of his life, but they were few, selective, people who could accompany him into the deep, and he was perfectly satisfied with that. Huberman talks about social homeostasis. Each person has an ideal point of interaction, and that point changes after a period of intense individuation. What once seemed necessary, dozens of superficial contacts, now seems unsupportable. What once seemed like loneliness, a few deep connections, now feels like fulfillment. But before I explain how to return from disappearing correctly, I need to tell you something that will change your perspective completely. There's a reason why your unconscious is pushing you to disappear exactly now. Jung believed that the psyche has a wisdom of its own, that the unconscious doesn't operate randomly, but teleologically, directed to a goal. And that goal is completeness, the integration of all the fragmented parts of you into a coherent whole. If you're feeling a growing urge to disappear, it's not a defect, it's your unconscious recognizing that the time has come for a reckoning, that you've lived too long on the surface, that there's deep work that needs to be done, and that work cannot be done while you're constantly available to the world. Dr. K. Tai has shown that the social neurons in the dorsal raphe nucleus start to behave differently when you systematically ignore their demands. They stop screaming for constant attention. They begin to accept longer periods of silence. Your own neurobiology adapts to the new pattern, and when that happens, you gain access to states of consciousness that were impossible before. Jung described moments of insight during his isolation that could only happen in absolute silence. Moments when the collective unconscious became accessible, when universal patterns of the human psyche reveal themselves through symbols, dreams, visions. These moments don't happen when your phone is buzzing. They don't happen when you're checking emails. They don't happen when any part of your attention is directed outward. They demand the kind of inner silence that only comes after months of dedicated practice. And here is the protocol for the 6 months I'm about to share. First month, the abstinence phase. In this month, your only job is to survive the discomfort. You'll want to go back. You'll question your decision. You'll feel pathetic, lost, confused. That's normal. That's the nigredo, the darkening. Keep going. Establish a rigorous routine from day one. A set time to wake up, to sleep, to eat, to write, to exercise. Leave no gaps. The external chaos has been removed. You need to create internal structure to compensate. Write every day, no matter what. Record your states, your dreams, your resistances, your fears. Name what is happening. Second month, the beginning of dialogue. In this month, you begin active imagination. Choose a recurring figure in your dreams or thoughts and initiate a written dialogue. Ask them what they want. Listen to the answer. Record everything. It might seem artificial at first, but you'll quickly realize that the answers have a quality that couldn't have come from you consciously, that there's something else responding. Continue with the routine. Continue with the journaling. Add some form of creative expression, painting, music, creative writing. Anything that allows the unconscious to express itself without the filter of the analytical mind. Third and fourth months about the deep descent. These are the most intense months. The heaviest material from the unconscious begins to emerge. Traumas you've forgotten, memories you've repressed, versions of yourself you've abandoned. Carl Jung called this the confrontation with the shadow self, and warned that it's not for the faint of heart. Keep your anchor of reality active during these months, a trusted person that you can contact if things get too intense, not to rescue you from the process, but to help you process what is emerging. Continue documenting everything. The dreams will be particularly vivid during this period. Record them immediately upon waking. They contain messages from the unconscious that are crucial for integration. Fifth month, the whitening. If you've survived months 3 and 4, the 5th month brings relief, not because the work is over, but because you've developed the capacity to sustain it. You've learned to dialogue with the shadow self without being consumed by it. In this month, begin to consciously integrate what you've learned. Reread your journals. Identify patterns. See how the complexes you've named connect with each other. Start to build a coherent narrative of who you are becoming. Andrew Huberman talks about the importance of retroactive reflection for neural consolidation. Revisiting past experiences with a new perspective strengthens the new connections formed. You are literally cementing the transformation. 6th month, the rebirth. The final month is for preparing for the return, not a return to what was before, because that is impossible, but a return to the world as a different person. Clearly define who you are becoming, what kind of life you want to live from now on, what types of relationships are compatible with your new self, what old commitments need to be abandoned, what new commitments need to be made, and prepare for the shock when you return. After 6 months of deep isolation, the world seems both familiar and completely strange. People haven't changed, but you have, and that dissonance can be disorienting. Carl Jung described this emergence as a rebirth. The old persona had died, the authentic self had been born, and you need to relearn how to function in the world from this new identity. Some relationships don't survive this transformation. People you knew before might not recognize who you've become, and if the relationship was based on who you were pretending to be, it has no way to continue. That's not failure. It's natural selection. The relationships that survive are the only ones worth keeping. Now I need to tell you something that's going to shock you about what comes next. When you correctly complete a 6-month period of vanishing, you acquire something that Carl Jung called the treasure of the unconscious, insights, wisdom, clarity that didn't exist before. And you have a choice about what to do with that treasure. Some people keep it for themselves, use the transformation to navigate their own lives more effectively, to build better relationships, to make decisions more aligned with who they really are. Other people choose to share. Carl Jung returned from his period of isolation with a mission. He spent the rest of his life teaching what he had discovered. His books, his lectures, his clinical work. Everything was a way to offer the world what he found in the depths. Any choice is valid. There is no wrong path. For someone who has gone through individuation, there is only your path. But there's something else that happens after 6 months of isolation that few mention. You develop an almost supernatural ability to read people. Carl Jung observed that after his period of confrontation with the unconscious, he could perceive things about his patients that were invisible to others. He could see their shadow self. He could identify the complexes operating beneath the surface. He could predict behaviors that hadn't yet manifested. This happens because, by confronting your own unconscious, you develop familiarity with the universal patterns of the psyche. The archetypes that Carl Jung identified aren't just yours. They're collective. And when you learn to recognize them in yourself, you automatically start to recognize them in others. Andrew Huberman confirmed that there's a form of social intelligence that goes beyond what can be measured by conventional tests, a capacity for non-verbal reading, for tuning into others' emotional states that develops with practice. And 6 months of intense dialogue with your own unconscious is an extreme form of that practice. You return from isolation with a sensitivity that can be overwhelming. Initially, you perceive things that others don't. You feel tensions that others ignore. And this can be both a gift and a burden. I need to give you one last warning. Before I conclude, not everyone should disappear for 6 months. Carl Jung was clear. That individuation is not for everyone. Some people have psychic structures too fragile to withstand the direct confrontation with the unconscious. The material that surfaces during the nigredo, the darkening, can be devastating for those who lack the internal resources to process it. It can be truly destructive. If you have a history of psychosis, if you're in the midst of an acute crisis, if you have absolutely no support network, disappearing for 6 months can be dangerous. It's not because the process itself is flawed, but because you need a more solid foundation before embarking on it. You need that grounding. Carl Jung himself had extensive medical training, years of clinical experience, a family that kept him anchored, and even then, there were times when he questioned his own sanity. He grappled with the darkness. Strategic disappearance is a powerful tool, But powerful tools demand respect. They require preparation. They demand honesty about your own capabilities and limitations. You must be realistic. If you are ready, if you feel the calling undeniably, if you have the necessary support structures in place, then what I've described in this video could be the roadmap to the most profound transformation of your life. It's a journey into the self. Jung once said that loneliness doesn't stem from a lack of people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to yourself. It's an internal disconnect. Maybe you need to disappear precisely to discover what truly matters to you, to find your own voice before attempting to communicate it to the world, to become someone who has something genuine to offer, rather than someone who simply reacts to the demands of others, to shed the conditioning. 6 months seems like a long time. It seems like an eternity when you're in the thick of the process, but it's a blink of an eye compared to the rest of your life. Consider the long game, and what you become on the other side is worth every moment of discomfort, every challenge faced. Comment below with the phrase 6 months if you're considering this period of transformation, if you're in the midst of the process, or if you've already emerged on the other side. I read all the comments and respond to the most insightful ones. I value your perspective. Your strategic disappearance may be waiting. The only question is, are you ready to answer the call? Are you ready to face the unknown? Remember, nature itself demands a death and a rebirth. It's cyclical. There are processes of natural transformation that simply happen to us, whether we like it or not. The question is whether you'll resist or cooperate. Embrace it. Jung chose to cooperate, and he emerged as one of the most influential minds of the 20th century, a true visionary. Your choice is in your hand. The power lies within you.